Hello everyone. Let's discuss about JSP Lifecycle. JSP stands for Java Server Page. So what happens in its life cycle? How the JSP file is getting processed? What happens it in its beginning during its creation and what happens at the end? All these things we should see. What are the stages that the JSP file is passing through? Are the things which we need to understand here. That is what is JSP lifecycle. So this is defined as a process from its creation till its destruction. Anything, any life cycle is nothing but right from its birth to its death is said to be a life cycle. Similarly here, the time when JSP is created and the time when it is getting stopped, exited, that is also to be destruction. So it is defined as a translation of JSP page into servlet because the JSP page needs to be converted into servlet first in order to process the service request. What happens with JSP page is as soon as the client gives the request, okay, the servlet, a program which is in the server, has to take care of that particular client's request, and depending upon it, it will be creating its own cookies, its own sessions. This is all we have seen in our previous classes. Okay, so here when you consider JSP, what it does is it gets translated into servlet because this JSP needs to be converted into servlet first so that the service request can be processed by the servlet. So the life cycle starts with the creation of such JSP and ends with the disintegration of that particular JSP file. When you say JSP file, it should be able to convert it into servlet. That is what is the major issue here. Okay, so when you consider the JSP lifecycle, it consists of these four stages. First of all, it is compilation. We'll see what is this compilation, initialization, execution, and cleanup. This is what is explained here. So when you look at this, there is something called as an initialization, but this is coming in the second phase. Before that, you are getting something called as compilation. So what is this compilation? Why it came first? That is what we should understand. So when you consider a JSP page, when you consider a JSP page, always the JSP program, the JSP file has to be compiled. And in order to compile such a JSP file, it has to get permission from JSP engine. It has to get permission from JSP engine. It will check whether the page has been compiled or not. Who will check? JSP engine will check whether the page, whichever is given to the server by the JSP page, okay, whether that page is compiled or not. It will check for it. For example, if it is compiled, till when is it compiled? Is it compiled even after the new modifications done or not? That is what it checks. Or otherwise, is it compiled only just now when all the modifications are done? Okay, this is what is checked by the JSP engine. Suppose if it is not at all compiled, then it will start compiling. It will compile. The JSP engine is going to compile the JSP file. Okay, suppose if it is compiled, it will check at till which point is it compiled. After that, are there any modifications to the JSP page? If yes, whether is it compiled even that also, even after that also, is what it is checked. If no, then it will try to compile at that point of time. So JSP engine is performing such a great job wherein the compilation of the entire JSP file is being performed by this particular engine. Okay, after compilation, and then you will be going for initialization. So basically, when you consider this compilation process, this is performed in three different stages. That is parsing the JSP, turning the JSP into a servlet, and compiling the servlet. If you remember the definition of the JSP lifecycle, we told that JSP lifecycle is defined as converting translating the JSP page file into servlet file. Only then the servlet will be able to accept or access the request given by the client to the server. So whenever you have a JSP file, that must be converted into servlet file. So the thing which the first thing which happens in JSP compilation is it will be parsing the JSP file. That means it checks from top to the bottom for any syntax errors. Okay, and it will convert the JSP page into a servlet, so that servlet is only accessible in order to accept the data from the client. That is why the JSP file is getting converted into servlet and then compile that particular servlet. So when you say JSP compilation, it is not the entire JSP file. It is not the actual JSP file which is getting compiled. Rather, it is the servlet which is getting compiled because our JSP file will be converted into servlet. Okay, this is how it gets compiled. After this stage, you have something called as JSP initialization. So this is how the life cycle looks like. This is how the life cycle looks like. That is JSP initialization phase, and then the service phase, that means execution phase, and then cleanup, nothing but destroy, destruction. Here it is called as shutdown phase. So what happens in this initialization? If you can look and understand here, you have something called as JSP init method. See, you see JSP init followed by small braces. It means that it is a method which we know. Okay, so in the initialization stage, what is actually acting actively? That is JSP init method is acting actively here. Okay, so once the initialization is done, what happens? It goes to the service page. It goes to the service page. What is the service page? Again, this service is again a method which is nothing but a JSP service method. So the actual code, whichever is requested by the client, will be available in this particular service method only. Okay, now this service method will be taking various HTTP requests and will be giving HTTP responses, because this particular service method is responsible for executing the actual code, actual request. As such, it will be accessing HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response parameters as parameters. Okay, so the main logic of our JSP page will be stored in JSP service method. And then you come to JSP destroy method. This is nothing but you have completely you have completely worked with the service method. It completely worked out. Everything is done. Now you are leaving the JSP servlet engine. Then in that case, you will be using a method called as JSP destroy method. So if you can remember one thing, your servlet lifecycle is also almost similar to this. That is init method, at the end destroy method, in between you'll have a service method. Again, there also this service method is used to access the HTTP servlet request and response parameters. Yes or no? So that is what is happening. So if you remember in servlets, the init method and the destroy method occurs only once for the entire life cycle. Okay. Similarly, even in JSP, the init method and destroy method will work only for one time throughout this life cycle. Once this life cycle is destroyed, then again it will create another servlet program and it will start from JSP init. So when you consider the initialization phase, what is happening there? You are having a method called as JSP init method. This particular method is actually given by the compiler itself. But here, in order to write our code, what we do is we'll try to override the JSP init method before servicing any request. Before taking any request, it should be opened. So it is opened by using JSP init method. Is that clear? So what, in order to perform our own task, we will be overriding this JSP init method, and the code is like this: public void JSP init method with which is a method, and the code you did here. Okay, that is what is JSP initialization. So when the yes, and as soon as this init method is called, what happens is all the database connections which are all related to JSP will be opened. All other methods like opening the file, closing the file, appending the file, all those things will be started when you start using your JSP init method, because it is not only that we should work with the client, because everything is in terms of responses, request to the server and response from the server. So we need to even connect it to the server as well. We need to even connect it to the database. So what happens is when you just try to call init method, that method will determine, which will be overridden, will determine database connections, file opening, closing. All these things also will be initialized once that is initialized. Once that JSP init method is overridden. So initialization of JSP will be performed only once as done with the servlet. This is what we discussed earlier. Next important phase is JSP execution. Here, this is the place where our actual code exists, and even this JSP service method is also an overridden method which is already given, but this is again overridden by the JSP engine depending upon the requirement of the client. Okay, depending upon the requirement of the client. This JSP service method, as I told you, will take HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet responses as its parameters. Okay, so its part of code is see void JSP service HTTP servlet request object comma and HTTP servlet response and code within it, which is the major code. Okay, so now JSP service method of JSP is invoked on the request basis. Depending upon the request only, it is going to create a particular code here. When we are writing the code here, the same method can't be used. As such, we'll try to override the same method. What do you mean by overriding? Overriding is nothing but you'll have the same return type. That means the method name as well as the method signature, everything is same. Everything is so same. So even here the return type, the method name as well as method parameters are all same. That is why we are saying we are overriding JSP service methods. Okay, so as soon as this is overridden, we will be writing our code which is related to us. This will generate the response of that request and also to use get, post and delete methods. Next, it is the JSP cleanup. Cleanup is nothing but destruction of our JSP page. So this will represent when a JSP is removed from use by the container. This is equivalent to the destroy method as in servlets, and override JSP destroy is used, and this is the code here. Hope you all understood clearly. Thank you.